Growth begins with a decision, not a timeline. It's not something that happens to you gradually or by accident. It begins the moment you decide that where you are is not where you have to stay. We often think that personal growth requires months of hard work, long hours, and years of persistence before we can see results. But the truth is, growth starts in an instant, the exact second you choose to change your perspective about yourself and the world around you. That single decision can set off a chain reaction that alters everything about the way you think, act, and lead your life. Think about how many times you've told yourself, "I'll start when I'm ready." We wait for the perfect conditions, the right opportunity, or the ideal timing. But waiting for readiness is often another form of fear. Readiness doesn't come before growth, it comes from growth. The decision to move forward, even when you feel uncertain or unprepared, is what actually creates readiness. Every leader, innovator, and change maker began not when they had everything figured out, but when they decided to take the first step despite the unknown. Growth begins with a simple moment of honesty, when you look at your reflection and acknowledge the gap between who you are and who you could become. That moment can feel uncomfortable, even painful, but discomfort is not a signal to stop, it's an invitation to grow. The people who evolve the fastest are not those who avoid discomfort, but those who lean into it. They understand that growth lives on the other side of unease. It's in those moments of struggle that our potential begins to take shape. The power of deciding to grow lies in the way it changes your internal dialogue. Suddenly, the excuses start to lose their grip. The voice that says, "You're not enough," is replaced with, "You're learning." The thought that whispers, "You can't do this," shifts into, "You can't do this yet." This mental shift doesn't erase the challenges, it reframes them. It teaches you to see setbacks as feedback, not as failures, and to view effort as a sign of strength, not struggle. When you decide to grow, you also begin to redefine what success means. It's no longer about reaching a specific destination, but about who you become along the way. The finish line stops being the focus, and progress becomes the new measure of achievement. Every small step forward, every act of persistence, every lesson learned. These moments compound into something extraordinary. You start to realize that growth is not a race, it's a rhythm. Deciding to grow also changes how you see others. You begin to celebrate the success of people around you instead of feeling threatened by it. Their achievements become proof of possibility, not a reminder of your limits. Growth mindset teaches you that there is no scarcity in success. Someone else's light does not dim your own. When you start thinking this way, collaboration replaces competition and learning replaces comparison. That decision to grow also teaches humility. It reminds you that you don't need to have all the answers. In fact, growth is born out of curiosity, the willingness to admit that there's still more to understand, still more to explore, still more to become. Humility opens the door to wisdom. The moment you stop pretending to know it all is the moment you become open to learning it all. Sometimes the hardest part of choosing growth is letting go of the old beliefs that kept you safe but small, letting go of the identity built around perfection, and letting go of comfort that comes from certainty. Growth requires surrender. You can't evolve while clinging to what no longer fits you. Every new version of yourself requires leaving behind the version that once felt enough. And though it begins with a decision, growth continues through discipline. It's a commitment you renew every single day. You don't have to transform overnight. You just have to keep showing up. You have to keep choosing curiosity over fear, resilience over resignation, and progress over perfection. Every day you make that choice, you strengthen the mindset that sustains your growth. The decision to grow is powerful because it shifts the control back to you. It tells you that no matter your past, your mistakes, or your circumstances, you have the ability to decide differently today. You are not defined by what has happened to you, but by what you choose to do next. Growth doesn't wait for permission. It begins the moment you decide that you're ready to see yourself and your life through a new lens. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that shape the way we live, think, and act. It has the ability to stop us before we even begin. The fear of failure, in particular, is something that holds countless people hostage. It keeps dreams locked away, ideas unspoken, and potential unexplored. We hesitate to take that next step because somewhere deep inside, we've been conditioned to believe that failing is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, the only real failure is refusing to try. When we stop asking, "What if I fail?" and instead ask, "What will I learn?" we shift from paralysis to progress. That one simple question reframes the experience of failure from something to fear into something to value. When you start to view failure through the lens of learning, everything changes. Mistakes are no longer heavy with shame, they become light with insight. Every setback becomes data, every misstep becomes a lesson, and every rejection becomes redirection. This is what separates those who grow from those who remain stagnant. Growth-minded people don't fear the fall because they've learned that falling forward still moves them closer to their goal. They know that the pain of learning is temporary, but the growth it produces lasts forever. Fear of failure often disguises itself as logic. It tells you that you're being practical or realistic. It convinces you that playing it safe is the smart thing to do. But safety and growth rarely coexist. Every great achievement, every breakthrough, and every innovation was born from a moment of risk. From someone daring to ask, "What if this works?" instead of "What if this doesn't?" The courage to ask that question is what opens the door to creativity, discovery, and transformation. Curiosity is the antidote to fear. When you approach challenges with curiosity instead of anxiety, your energy shifts. You stop bracing for disaster and start searching for meaning. Curiosity invites exploration. It welcomes mistakes as necessary steps in the learning process. The most successful people are not those who never fail, they're the ones who keep asking better questions. They don't let a wrong answer stop them, they let it guide them to the next right one. It's not easy to make this shift. It requires unlearning years of conditioning that equates perfection with value. Many of us were taught that being wrong meant being less capable, less intelligent, or less worthy. But growth demands imperfection. It's messy, unpredictable, and often uncomfortable. To learn, you must be willing to look foolish for a while. You must be willing to admit you don't know everything. That humility becomes the foundation of real development. Each time you choose learning over fear, you strengthen your resilience. Resilience is built not through success, but through recovery. It's the ability to get up one more time, even when the outcome is uncertain. When you reframe failure as feedback, you stop taking it personally. You begin to see it as part of the process, not a reflection of your worth. Every disappointment becomes an opportunity to adjust, adapt, and try again with greater clarity. Fear wants to keep you small. It whispers that staying where you are is safer than stepping into the unknown. But the truth is, stagnation is far more dangerous than failure. Growth happens in the discomfort of uncertainty, not in the comfort of control. When you ask, "What will I learn?" you reclaim your power from fear. You're no longer a victim of circumstances. You become an active participant in your own evolution. The more you practice curiosity, the more natural it becomes. Over time, your brain begins to associate failure not with pain, but with progress. You start to seek challenges instead of avoiding them. You begin to understand that every new experience, no matter how difficult, contains a lesson that can move you forward. This mindset doesn't eliminate fear, it teaches you to move with it, to use it as fuel rather than friction. People who operate with a learning mindset radiate a quiet confidence. They no longer chase perfection, they pursue understanding. They don't define success by the absence of mistakes, but by the presence of growth. This kind of confidence doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from awareness. It's the knowledge that failure is not fatal, and that every attempt, no matter the outcome, brings you closer to mastery. When you stop fearing failure and start focusing on learning, life becomes expansive again. Possibility opens up. Every project, relationship, and goal becomes an opportunity to discover something new about yourself and the world. Curiosity transforms fear into fuel and failure into feedback, and in that shift, from what if I fail to what will I learn, you find the freedom to keep growing, no matter what stands in your way. Growth is not something you stumble upon, it's something you choose. It's not a prize waiting at the finish line, but a practice that begins the moment you wake up and continues with every decision you make throughout the day. A growth mindset isn't about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens. It's the ability to take ownership of your progress, to recognize that no one else can do the work for you. When you decide that growth is a choice, you reclaim control over your journey. You no longer wait for circumstances to change before you do. You change and your circumstances follow. Choosing growth means understanding that every situation, whether pleasant or painful, is an opportunity to evolve. It's easy to feel motivated when things are going your way, but real growth is revealed in the moments that challenge you. When things fall apart, when plans fail, when uncertainty looms, that's when the choice to grow becomes most powerful. It's the decision to find meaning in difficulty and purpose in struggle. This mindset doesn't ignore hardship. It transforms it into strength. It teaches you that growth is not the absence of obstacles, but the courage to keep going despite them. A choice to grow is also a choice to let go of perfection. Growth doesn't happen in straight lines or flawless patterns. It's uneven, unpredictable, and often uncomfortable. The pursuit of perfection keeps you frozen, waiting for a moment when everything feels right. But growth happens when you step forward, even when things feel uncertain or incomplete. It's not about being the best version of yourself right now. It's about becoming a little better than you were yesterday. Progress, not perfection, is the real marker of a growth mindset. People often think that growth will make life easier, but it usually does the opposite. It makes life more meaningful. Growth introduces complexity, challenge, and depth. It demands reflection and honesty. It asks you to face your fears, your habits, and your blind spots. This process can be uncomfortable because it requires you to confront the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. But every time you do, you grow stronger, wiser, and more capable of handling what comes next. Growth is not about seeking comfort, it's about seeking clarity. The beauty of making growth a daily choice is that it creates consistency. You begin to understand that real change doesn't come from one grand moment of transformation. It comes from small, intentional actions repeated over time. The way you think, the words you use, the people you surround yourself with, and the habits you cultivate all contribute to your growth. Each choice compounds, each moment builds on the next, and before long, you realize that you've become someone who doesn't just dream about change, you live it. When you choose growth, you give yourself permission to fail. You understand that setbacks are not signs to quit, but signals to adjust. You start to see mistakes not as proof of inadequacy, but as evidence of effort. This shift in perception allows you to take more risks, explore more possibilities, and experiment without fear. The people who achieve the most are not the ones who avoid failure. They are the ones who have made peace with it. They know that growth requires movement, and movement always involves missteps. Another aspect of choosing growth is the realization that it's deeply personal. Your journey doesn't need to look like anyone else's. Comparison is the thief of growth because it distracts you from your own progress. When you measure yourself against others, you lose sight of how far you've already come. A growth mindset teaches you to focus inward, to ask, "What did I learn today?" instead of "How do I measure up?" That question leads to awareness, and awareness is where all growth begins. Choosing growth means embracing patience. It's the understanding that meaningful change doesn't happen overnight. It's built through persistence, consistency, and time. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, patience becomes a rare strength. It's what allows you to stay committed even when the results aren't visible yet. When you choose to keep going, to trust the process, and to invest in small steps forward, you create momentum that becomes unstoppable. The decision to grow is also an act of self-respect. It's choosing to invest in your potential instead of settling for what's comfortable. It's acknowledging that you are worthy of progress, worthy of learning, and worthy of becoming more. This kind of decision has a quiet power. It doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. It's often made in silence, in those private moments when no one is watching, when you decide to try again after falling short. That's where growth truly begins to take root. Growth at its core is not about achieving something new, it's about revealing what was always within you. It's about peeling back layers of fear, doubt, and limitation to uncover the part of you that's capable, resilient, and evolving. When you choose growth every day, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You realize that life doesn't just happen to you. You shape it, one choice at a time. The way you see the world shapes everything about your experience in it. Two people can face the exact same situation, and yet one will see an obstacle while the other sees an opportunity. The difference isn't in what happens to them, it's in how they interpret it. Perspective is the lens through which growth becomes possible. When you begin to understand that your interpretation is more powerful than the event itself, you unlock the ability to transform setbacks into stepping stones. Every disappointment, every rejection, and every challenge carries a lesson, but only if you choose to look for it. Perspective is what allows you to take control of your story. Most people live as if they are trapped by circumstance, believing that external forces determine their fate. But the truth is, the greatest power you possess is the ability to assign meaning to what happens. You can decide that failure means you're not good enough, or you can decide it means you're still learning. You can believe that obstacles are unfair, or you can believe they're preparing you for something greater. The event stays the same, but the meaning changes everything. When your perspective shifts toward growth, you begin to see patterns that were invisible before. You start recognizing that challenges are not isolated moments of pain. They are part of a larger process designed to build you. You see how each struggle strengthens your resilience, how each delay refines your patience, and how each mistake sharpens your judgment. What once looked like chaos begins to reveal structure. The moments that once felt like detours begin to look like direction. Perspective brings coherence to confusion. This shift doesn't happen naturally. It's something you must cultivate with awareness. The mind has a tendency to default to negativity, to see threat instead of opportunity, to protect rather than to grow. That's why developing a growth-oriented perspective requires deliberate effort. It means pausing before reacting, asking yourself what the experience is trying to teach you instead of why it's happening to you. It means catching your thoughts when they spiral into self-doubt and consciously replacing them with curiosity. This isn't denial, it's direction. When you begin to view problems as teachers, something remarkable happens. You start to welcome them. You stop running from difficulty and start engaging with it. You approach challenges not as tests of worth, but as exercises in strength. Each time you face a problem with this mindset, you train yourself to become more adaptable. You become less afraid of change because you've learned that change is where growth hides. Perspective turns adversity into your greatest instructor. People who master perspective also transform their relationships. They stop taking everything personally and start seeing others with empathy. When you recognize that everyone is fighting unseen battles, your compassion deepens. You stop responding to anger with anger, criticism with defensiveness, and rejection with resentment. Instead, you look for understanding. This shift doesn't just make you a better communicator, it makes you a better human. A growth mindset allows you to see not only your own potential, but also the potential in others. Perspective shapes how you handle success as well. Without the right lens, achievement can become an ego trap, a way of proving superiority rather than celebrating progress. But with a growth-oriented perspective, success becomes a marker of evolution, not validation. You don't measure yourself against others. You measure yourself against who you were yesterday. That's why growth-minded individuals remain humble. They know success is temporary, but the pursuit of improvement is endless. Reframing how you see the world also influences your emotions. When you understand that emotions are responses to interpretation, not to events themselves, you realize you have far more control over your state of mind than you thought. A missed opportunity doesn't have to mean failure. It can mean redirection. Criticism doesn't have to hurt. It can heal if it helps you see where you can improve. The gap between frustration and fulfillment often lies in how you choose to perceive what's in front of you. Over time, this way of seeing becomes second nature. You start to notice opportunities where others see dead ends. You start to recognize lessons where others see losses. Even in moments of uncertainty, you find stability in your perspective. It becomes your anchor, a mental habit that keeps you steady no matter how turbulent the situation may be. You stop being a product of your environment and start becoming the creator of your experience. Perspective is the silent force that determines whether you evolve or remain stuck. It governs your beliefs, your reactions, and ultimately your results. When you train yourself to interpret challenges through the lens of growth, you begin to rewrite the story of your life. You stop being limited by circumstance and start being guided by insight. What was once an obstacle becomes an opportunity to understand, to improve, and to rise a little higher than you were before. Reflection is one of the most powerful yet underestimated tools for personal growth. It's the quiet pause between experience and understanding, the bridge that connects action to awareness. In the rush of daily life, most people move from one task to the next without ever stopping to ask what they're learning along the way. But when you take time to reflect, you give yourself permission to make sense of your journey. You begin to see patterns, lessons, and insights that were invisible in the moment. Reflection is not about dwelling on the past. It's about extracting wisdom from it. It's what transforms ordinary experiences into opportunities for transformation. In those moments of stillness, you begin to uncover truths that busyness hides. Reflection forces you to slow down and confront the reality of where you are versus where you want to be. It shines a light on your habits, your choices, and your assumptions. It asks uncomfortable questions, the kind that don't have easy answers but lead to deep understanding. When you reflect, you begin to see the difference between movement and progress. You might realize that you've been busy but not purposeful, active but not advancing. That awareness alone can redirect your energy toward what truly matters. 15 minutes of reflection can hold more value than hours of unexamined effort. In that short window of quiet thought, you can replay moments of the day and identify where you grew, where you resisted growth, and where you missed an opportunity to improve. You can turn experiences into lessons, emotions into insights, and mistakes into strategies for doing better next time. The mind learns best not just through doing, but through understanding what was done. Reflection is the process that allows learning to settle and take shape. It's easy to underestimate the importance of this process because reflection doesn't produce visible results right away. There's no applause for thinking deeply, no recognition for taking time alone to understand yourself. But the benefits reveal themselves over time in the form of better decisions, stronger self-awareness, and clearer direction. Reflection helps you act with intention instead of impulse. It gives you the clarity to choose your responses instead of being ruled by reactions. It turns chaos into coherence by organizing your thoughts into meaning. Reflection is also the key to resilience. When you take time to process your failures, you stop them from defining you. You begin to see them as part of your evolution rather than as proof of inadequacy. You start asking, "What did this teach me?" instead of "Why did this happen to me?" That question shifts your energy from blame to growth. It helps you build mental and emotional strength. Every time you reflect on a setback, you extract something valuable from it, a piece of insight that prepares you for the next challenge. Many people avoid reflection because it requires honesty. It demands that you look at your choices without excuses. It forces you to confront the difference between who you say you are and who you actually are. But this kind of honesty is what drives transformation. When you can sit with your discomfort long enough to understand it, you stop running from it. You begin to heal, to adjust, and to align. Growth cannot happen without truth, and reflection is how truth emerges. In reflection, you also rediscover gratitude. You start to see how far you've come instead of only focusing on how far you have left to go. You remember the moments when things felt impossible and realize you made it through. Gratitude changes the emotional tone of reflection from judgment to appreciation. It reminds you that even the hardest moments contributed to your development. Reflection through gratitude allows you to honor your progress while still striving for more. Regular reflection also strengthens your sense of purpose. It connects your daily actions to your larger goals. When you understand why you're doing something, your effort gains direction. Reflection helps you align your actions with your values, ensuring that what you do externally matches who you are internally. It becomes a practice of alignment, of making sure that your growth is not random, but intentional. This kind of clarity helps you move forward with confidence instead of confusion. Reflection doesn't have to be complex or time-consuming. It can be as simple as journaling, meditating, or sitting quietly with your thoughts. What matters is consistency. The more you practice it, the sharper your awareness becomes. You start noticing your triggers, your patterns, and your progress in real time. Reflection trains you to be mindful, to observe without judgment, and to learn without resistance. It's the habit that turns experience into wisdom and wisdom into growth. Through reflection, you begin to see that life is constantly teaching you something. Every conversation, every frustration, every success contains a message if you're willing to look for it. Reflection is what allows those messages to surface. It is the moment when understanding catches up with experience, when lessons crystallize into insight. It's not just thinking about the past. It's preparing yourself for the future with greater clarity and purpose. Taking ownership is the turning point between wishing for change and creating it. It is the moment you stop waiting for life to happen and begin to shape it with intention. When you take ownership, you no longer hand control of your growth to external circumstances or other people. You accept that your progress depends on your actions, your mindset, and your willingness to learn. It's not about blaming yourself for everything. It's about understanding that you have the power to respond differently, to think differently, and to become different. Ownership is the foundation of a growth mindset because it shifts you from a passive observer to an active participant in your own evolution. When you take ownership, excuses lose their power. The common narratives, "I don't have time," "I'm not ready," "It's not my fault," begin to fade because you recognize that these thoughts keep you from growing. Ownership requires courage because it forces you to look at the gap between what you say you want and what you're actually doing. It means confronting habits that no longer serve you and replacing them with choices that move you forward. This isn't always comfortable, but it is liberating. You stop wasting energy on what you can't control and start focusing entirely on what you can. Owning your growth means being accountable for your mindset. You can't control every event, but you can control your interpretation and reaction. People who take ownership don't let setbacks define them. They use them as opportunities to build resilience. They don't blame the market, the system, or other people. They ask, "What can I do next?" That question alone separates stagnation from progress. It transforms victimhood into empowerment. Ownership is not about pretending that life is fair. It's about understanding that fairness isn't a prerequisite for progress. Taking ownership also demands that you stop seeking validation. When you rely on others to tell you when to move, how to think, or whether you're doing enough, you surrender your autonomy. A growth mindset thrives on internal motivation, the quiet confidence that your worth isn't dependent on approval. Ownership means trusting your inner compass, even when others don't understand your path. It's about becoming your own source of accountability, holding yourself to the standards you set, not the ones others impose. This mindset extends to learning itself. People who own their growth don't wait for opportunities to appear, they create them. They read, practice, experiment, and fail forward. They know that nobody is responsible for their education but themselves. Ownership in learning means seeking feedback instead of avoiding it, asking questions instead of pretending to know, and pursuing mastery even when it's inconvenient. It's the difference between those who hope to improve someday and those who are improving every day. Owning your growth also means taking responsibility for your emotions. It's easy to believe that other people make you angry, disappointed, or frustrated. But ownership means recognizing that while others can trigger emotions, they can't control your response. When you take emotional ownership, you learn to pause before reacting, to understand your triggers, and to decide how you want to feel. This control over your inner state gives you clarity and stability, even when life feels unpredictable. It's the quiet strength that keeps you grounded amid chaos. In taking ownership, you also redefine what success looks like. Success stops being about luck or talent and becomes about consistency and discipline. You start valuing process over perfection, effort over ease. You recognize that growth isn't linear and that every step, even the backward ones, contributes to your evolution. When you own your path, you no longer chase quick wins, you build sustainable habits that compound into long-term success. Ownership teaches you patience because you know progress is earned, not given. Taking ownership also builds integrity. It aligns your words with your actions, your intentions with your behavior. When you hold yourself accountable, you build trust, not just with others, but with yourself. You begin to believe in your own reliability. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens that belief, and every broken promise becomes a lesson in self-awareness. Integrity is what keeps you moving forward when motivation fades. It is the quiet discipline that sustains growth when inspiration is absent. People who take ownership radiate responsibility in everything they do. They don't avoid hard conversations, they initiate them. They don't complain about what's wrong, they find ways to make it better. They lead by example, showing through action that growth isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. This approach to life inspires others because it demonstrates that accountability is empowering, not burdensome. Ownership turns responsibility into freedom, because when you control your choices, you control your direction. When you take ownership and act now, you stop living reactively and start living deliberately. You understand that no one is coming to rescue you. No one is going to hand you the mindset you need. You have to build it yourself. Each decision you make becomes a declaration of commitment to your growth. You no longer wait for the right moment because you realize the right moment is the one you create. Ownership turns intention into action, and action into progress, one choice at a time.